Hello, everyone. Welcome to Writers Need Help. This week, we are doing frequently asked questions. So we'll be answering your frequently asked questions about writing or the publishing process. And we also have a big old list of ones that we got sent in ahead of time. So we'll be answering those as well. But we usually start with our updates. So let's go around and see what updates people have, and we'll start with Scarlett first.
I feel like I said this last week, but I really have finished Malice. I just finished another read through today. And so, Hand's back. Jerry's back.
Jerry, the skeleton hand, is back.
Yes. So yeah, that was really cool. We think we'll have the hardback up for pre-order, which is actually a big deal to my readers. And I've started King of Battle and Blood. So yeah, it's
awesome. Nice. Well, I guess we'll talk about, because we're going to answer some of our questions were about like, where do you start and how do you research ahead of time and do the planning? So we'll probably talk about that more.
cool.
Yeah. Alicia, what about you?
I'm actually in that stage of still planning the second draft, still like letting my head like daydream. So I have like the first half ready in my outline. I get the second half.
Yes. Do I get to read this? Do I get to be like a beta reader?
I would love for you guys to be beta readers. The first draft was just so confusing and messy. I was like, no one needs to read this.
I feel you.
Oh yeah, definitely. I feel you on a lot of my books are like that. And actually, I just I finished up a book. It was the second read through of the fourth big revision on this book. So I mean, it's gone through a lot, and like I have projects of all types. Like some of them come out kind of fully formed, and then some of them are like this one, just a beautiful, messy tumbleweed.
It's like
a tumbleweed.
Some ideas come out like almost a perfect diamond ready to be put in the ring. And then some are just like a piece of coal.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, fix me.
I hope KBB is a perfect diamond. I'm like, please, for the love of God, can you be easy? I was just talking to an author friend today about how like the difference in writing a book that doesn't have reader expectation and how like how much of a relief that is. And I think that's why I'm so excited to write KBB, because like, yeah, it'll just be like no expectations, like no one's waiting for it. People aren't getting angry at other people because they can read it now. Like, I'm excited.
Yeah, I can see how a series would be really tough once you've built up those expectations, having never done a series before.
Get ready for it, y'all.
Yeah, that would be really tough. So yeah, I finished up the read through of this big project. It was super amazing. It's just way longer than the stuff that I'm used to writing too. So it takes kind of like twice as long.
How many words?
It's like 105,000 words, which for me, because my middle grades are typically 60,000 words or something. So it's not quite twice, but it's almost twice as long. And you can tell when you're going, it just takes longer to go through the process. So I'm really excited about that, because now I'm going back to a project that the proposal is done. And now I want to like finish the book, right? This is one of those books that came out fully formed, and so I'm like really excited to finish it because I think it's gonna come out smoothly. So this is gonna be awesome. So yeah, that's me this week, and I guess we'll dive into our questions. And yeah, like I said, we are gonna take whatever questions people have. You can get those in the comments, and we'll definitely answer those. But our first question that came in ahead of time was about writing schedules. So do you schedule out your writing? So I don't know if they're talking about maybe like on a yearly basis? Like, do you set as like goals like for the year, or do you schedule yourself out by week or things like that? Or do you just kind of go with the flow and write whenever the urge like overtakes you and you feel creative? Scarlett, what would you say? Which one of those are you?
Okay, so I don't know what they're referring to either, but I do get asked about timelines a lot, but I'm not very good at. Instead of, I don't know how to explain this. I guess I plan out my books and then I give myself a timeline for when I'm going to finish that book, and I can usually tell how long that needs to be once I begin, and then I can give it a because I'm self-published, I can give it a publishing date, and that holds me accountable and makes like it ensures that I actually work on it every day. So yeah, I guess that's all. I don't know. Is there a follow-up question?
Yeah, we're gonna get a little bit more into kind of daily goals and stuff like that too. But I think this person was more like, do you are you like a schedule oriented? Like you're like, here, I'm going to, like you said, you have this thing done by a certain date. So you set the publication date and that's what motivates you. Or are you just writing whenever you kind of feel like it? But it sounds like you're driven toward that goal.
I got to January and I was like, you have a book due in like months, get it done. And so then I did. That's what happened.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I think, so I too schedule out time, but of course I'm traditionally published, so I don't have like let's say you don't have a book right now that's on deadline and you're just kind of writing stuff on spec that you hope to sell, I set my own deadlines. So it's a little bit different because if I were to miss that deadline, nothing terrible would happen. It's just a self-imposed deadline. But yeah, when I have a project, I definitely schedule out the time and I try to do it on a yearly basis, but that changes so much because so much of it is out of your control. And also, I know how long it's going to take me to write the first draft, essentially, because I write about the same number of words every day. But then, like we just said, some books are messy and some books come out fully formed. So you don't know if this is going to take one draft and then like some cleanup and like beta reads and then you can send it out, or if it's going to be one of these that you do 4 revisions on before you even send it out, right? So that messes up the timeline for me. Alicia, what would you say, like scheduling or just whenever you feel creative?
Definitely scheduling. I did that when I had the full-time job, which was always just like Friday nights and all day Saturday and Saturday night. But now that writing is basically my full-time job, I schedule out at least 4 days a week to write and block off that time. And I do try to set my own like deadlines. And even though, like you said, nothing bad's going to happen if I don't hit them. But yeah, I do schedule them so that, I'm a goal-oriented person. So if I set myself a deadline, that's like motivation because I'm like, oh, I need to hit it.
Yeah. And I think, it depends why you're writing because we're all like doing this full time now. And that's a big part of our goal, I think, is to keep doing this full time. So that kind of is going to, you're going to have to schedule it a lot more. But if you're kind of doing it for fun or as a hobby or just dipping your toes in, it's totally fine to just follow the muse and whenever you feel creative and whatnot. So there's no right way to do it, but yes. And so someone else had asked kind of more specifically about daily goals or like, do you set daily word count goals / weekly, monthly? Like how far out do you go with that? And also how many hours do you work in a day? So just like breaking it down.
Ooh, I like this question.
I know. Well, Alicia, I'll send it to you first. Then like, what do you have a breakdown for like every day or week?
Yeah. I am a super scheduler. I just find it fun. So I try to write, or I work on the book 4 days a week, and I block off the morning, like literally from the time I'm done eating breakfast, which is usually around 7:30 to noon is my writing time, and or plotting, outlining, rereading to like an edit or a revision. That is my writing time. And usually if I'm drafting a book, my daily goal is 1 chapter. Like that's like the basic I want to hit. And word count wise, depending on what I'm writing, like middle grade, that could be just like 1,500 words. Adult could be like 3,000 words. So the basic goal is 1 chapter. And then I have like a stretch goal of 2 chapters, and then another stretch goal of like 3 chapters. If I'm like, I don't know, really crazy that day and the creativity is just like flowing out of me.
You like those days.
I do. I like those days too. And usually after I'm done with an outline, because I'll outline each chapter, so then I know how many chapters I have. So then I can look at my schedule and be like, okay, if I hit a chapter a day for 4 days a week, I kind of get a deadline in mind of like when I should probably be able to have it done. So then that I guess is not really a monthly, because I can't write a book in 1 month. It's like quarterly. A quarterly goal is to finish a book.
Yeah, I think breaking stuff down in quarters is really smart. I just heard someone recommending that on another podcast as opposed to years, because I always do a year, which I think is good. It's good to like have just as a brainstorming document, like what you think you might do for an entire year. But I just find that it changes so much that I'm constantly changing the later stuff. But like in a quarter, I can pretty much know what I'm actually going to do, I think. But Scarlett, do you know like how many, like, do you set like how many hours, how many words and stuff per day?
No, I've tried and I can't do it. I don't know. It's just not the way my brain operates. But I do, once I get to a certain point in the book, I do try to do a chapter a day at least. But like I write all day, whatever, you know, like after I work out, I come home and write, and then I just keep doing it until like 9 o'clock at night. And I should stop, but I don't know how yet. Maybe I'll get into some rhythm with KBB. But I was so used to, you know, only writing at nights and on weekends when I worked full time, that being a full-time author is a really hard transition. So I don't know, but yeah, I try to do a chapter a day, and I kind of know about the word count I'm going to hit overall for the book. So I can write a book in about 4 months. And so I know, you know, I can probably write 120,000 words in 4 months. I don't know what that looks like in a breakdown, but I just get it done. I wish I was organized like Alicia. I really do. And you, Kim, because I know you do those writing sprints and stuff, and I cannot do it. I don't know.
Yes, I think it's called the Pomodoro method. Like I do a version of that, which essentially is 25-minute blocks. Although I think the actual Pomodoro method is that you do 25 minutes on, a 5-minute break, and then you're like right back at it. But like I take way longer breaks in between. But essentially I just use my Forest app to do like the 25-minute periods where I am absolutely focused on whatever activity it is. So if it's the writing, that's all I can do. Or if it's like admin stuff, I'll time that too. Or reading even, I time. And then I definitely do 5 25-minute sessions per day. And that's my new way of tracking it. But if you add all that up, it's actually only 2 hours and 5 minutes. So it doesn't sound like a lot. But the funny thing is, like doing that method, I've been getting more words done than my previous method. And it seems like it just takes way less time. So typically, you know, of course, it's higher and lower, but I can do 2,500 words on those 5 sessions. And then it depends where I am in the book for me, how easily it comes out. So early on, I usually do fewer words in a day because I'm not quite in the flow yet. And then as I get farther into the book, it's just flowing and the words will come a lot more easily. So I'll do a lot more words usually. Yeah, so that's generally, and I will set a goal for when I think I can finish the first draft, for sure. And I can usually hit that, although, I'm always like overly optimistic. So I'm like, here's the exact number of days. And if I do this many words a day, it adds up to that. But then what you didn't realize is like today, like Monday, I spent the entire day doing admin, and like a lot of my Mondays look like that. It just all comes in at once. And so you're like, if you have to account for that. So like, be aware that although I think I'm going to spend every single day in the month working, there might be some day I might actually take a weekend day, or I might have to take a Monday to do like an admin day or something. So yeah, it doesn't always work out, but I like to set overly ambitious goals. Like I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And then, you just do the best you can to actually meet them. But yeah, so that's me. Anyway, that was a great series of questions because I think we're all kind of planners in that way. So we love
Not me, clearly.
Well, you are, because you set that main date that is like guiding all of your activities. So
and then you're just like consistent every day to like because you hit your deadline when you make it.
I do. After I think I could write way faster if I didn't just like, I don't know, get really distracted every single day. I get so distracted.
Well, that's why I love these sessions. Like that was my thing, is that I would spend the entire day getting my word count done because I would be distracted every 5 minutes or something. And this way I do 25, and it's like, it's longer than it feels like. I mean, it feels like it goes by fast, but it's like you get a lot done during that focus time or whatever. But
I'll have to try it.
I don't know.
I should try it too, because I tend to like write or like try to focus for about an hour, and then I give myself like a 10-minute break and then another hour and 10-minute break. But an hour is long.
That is a long time.
Yeah, but I'm impressed that you can focus for an hour, because I'm like, oh, Facebook, oh, Twitter, oh, Instagram. Like I'm constantly
well,
distracted.
and this is so good because like, and I use that app where if you do something else, your tree dies, and you have this little dead tree that shows up in your garden or whatever, and it never goes away. And so it's a great motivator for me. And yeah, I think it's really helped me stop getting distracted, saying that I'm going to focus on it for just those little periods that are really doable. Because an hour does seem too long. But the other thing I found is that I'll set the 25 minutes, and it doesn't ding or anything because I have my sound off. And so I have to check it to make sure. And so when I'm really into it, I will be working and I'll look, and it tracks your extra time too. So I've gone like an hour over or something, you know what I mean? Without even realizing it at certain points. I think it's helpful for that too, if you don't set it to actually ding, because you'll go way longer than you planned on.
Well, that's smart.
Yeah.
So it doesn't interrupt when you do hit a flow. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I would recommend. I see Katie Forest app with exclamation points. So yeah, I like it. I don't know. Anyway, let's move on to our next question that came in, and this was about outlining. So basically, what is your method of planning out a novel, and how much time do you spend on the planning process? So I think y'all are probably more planners than me. I don't know. I'll send it to Alicia because I know you're like a super planner first.
So it depends on the project. I think the middle grades that I've worked on the last year and a half, 2 years, I was able to outline them in about 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. And the adult project that I just worked on, I researched, because that's a historical fantasy, and I did have to research a lot. I researched for 3 months and then outlined for 4 weeks, a solid month. And then that is crazy, confusing, and messy, but it's done, and now I'm outlining a new draft because I found out that the plot was too complicated, which is probably why I over outlined. 4 weeks of outlining might be too much.
Yeah, I think that's really tough when you have something that is so complicated like that. There's so many things that, like you said, like you could overcomplicate the outline. Or for me, what I find sometimes is that if I try to do a really complicated outline, by the end of that outline, I feel like I've already written the book. So what's the point of actually writing it? Like I just sucked all the joy out of it. So why bother? So I think I've realized I need to do like an in-between. Like I need to know the big beats of the story. And we talked about, I like the 7-point method or whatever. Yeah. So I tend to use that one, but yeah, I don't know, but I think that would make it hard for me to write something that is really complicated, like an epic fantasy or something where you kind of need to do a really detailed outline. Although I don't know. I mean, I think you can always get away with kind of outlining as you go, I think, like in sections. So yeah, I do like kind of in between just the big beats. And it doesn't take me long to plan because I am impatient. So listening to Alicia be like, it took you this, I'm like, I couldn't do that. And partly what that results in is that sometimes I start projects that end up going nowhere because I will figure that out after I've written the first 10,000 words. I'm like, oh yeah, this isn't going to work. But it's like I had to write that to figure it out as opposed to outlining, because that's just how my brain works. And so, yeah, I mean, I think both of them can be messy in different ways.
And I'm learning that you do have to update your outline. Maybe not. I didn't update it as I went, but all of my books, even the middle grade ones that I wrote, wrote pretty fast. From the initial outline, what is now like in the completed manuscript, things changed. Not a whole lot, maybe, but like at least a few things. Whereas in this one, I am changing everything. Not everything. Like all the characters are still there. I just found like a more streamlined plot that will allow me to do more world building and character development, because I realized like there wasn't enough of that. There was too much plot. And so I'm trying to flip it for this one, because I was like, well, when I read fantasy, I care about the characters and like this new world we're in.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Update your outlines as you go.
Oh yeah, for sure. Scarlett, what would you say?
I do a combination of both. I think I outline, but later. So I always start a book by writing scenes that are very loud, and then I put those together. So I just kind of free write. And I usually can free write for about 40,000 words until I have to stop and like start all over again. And that's when I outline. But when I start from the beginning and write after that 40,000 words, I will start adding to the outline more and more. And at some point I stop using it completely. I stop using the outline. It's weird. It helps me just get my thoughts straight. Cause I'm like Alicia, I overcomplicate. And so I have to constantly tell myself to like quit making this complicated. Just take the simplicity, do the simple plot. And usually I overcomplicate because I'm trying to write like 3 books in one book. So that's where the outline helps me not be complicated. But yeah, I just try to use a combination of both.
Yeah, I like that. I think I too tend to use the outlining more in revision than I do in the first draft. So for the first draft, I'll just do maybe like a pitch and the 7-point plot structure, so you can Google 7-point plot structure. I think Dan Wells has a good talk about it on YouTube. You can watch. But yeah, it's just breaking down like 7 important beats, and it's used a lot for screenplays. I know I went through like Neal Shusterman, used to write screenplays, or maybe still does write screenplays, and of course is like a best-selling YA author. And I broke down his book Scythe with that method. And it's just very clear. Like you can see exactly how he used that 7-point. I don't know if he actually used it, but I can see exactly where it was in there. So that's useful to kind of to teach yourself by breaking down other people's novels using that method. And so that is a helpful one for me. But like I said, I need to kind of just discovery write, like especially for the beginning to get a sense of the characters. And then I'll usually stop, like Scarlett mentioned, maybe like a quarter of the way through or something, and then I'll outline it in sections, be like, okay, what's going to happen now going forward? And then when I go back, I'll do the 7-point again and be like, okay, did I actually hit these things? And if not, how could I hit these things in the revision and like that? So that's for me, just because I feel like if I try to do it to an outline, it feels flat. For just with my writing style. And so I need to do it a little bit more intuitively the first time around to kind of get the characters to feel more alive and whatnot. But yes, the planning. And we actually had a couple of questions on that one. So I think that's a question that a lot of people are asking. How do you plan?
I get asked that all the time. I get asked like, how do you, I don't know why. It's very interesting. I always recommend that you, because I think we all kind of adapted to our own, right, the way we start stories. And I think it's hard to change that. I think it's just how you think. Is that Hera?
That's what I had to.
Yeah. My dog's making noises. So.
Oh. That's what I had to find. The first 2 books I wrote, I pantsed and then tried to revise and find like plot. And that was years of running in circles. And then I found out that for my brain, I have to like know like a couple different points in the story, or else I will get lost. And it's very hard to find my way back.
Yeah.
But some people are the opposite, like you were talking about, Kim.
Yeah. I just, in order for me to stay in love with the story, I feel like I have to have it a little bit more up in the air so that I'm discovering it and I don't feel like I already know what it is and now it feels like a chore because I've already written it in the outline. So
yeah.
I am kind of. But okay, let's see here. So we had another question. I don't know what I meant by this. Like trying to decipher my notes now. How much time? I think I meant like how much time does it take from idea to publication? Oh yeah, that's what I meant.
That's interesting for y'all.
Well, that's interesting for you too, though, because
it's interesting for both, right? Yeah. So for self-publishing, Scarlett, what would you say from idea to publication? Well, have you set a date for your vampire novel?
And when did you have the idea?
Yeah,
we can figure out this how long
exactly.
it's taken.
KBB has been in my head for a really long time, but I was writing Malice at the time, so I just wrote down the scenes. For a long time, for probably over a year, and I'm just to the point where I finished Malice, so I can work on it. And I really think I can get it written fast. I think I can get it published by the end of August.
Whoa!
But that's because I can hear the characters really well, and I know the plot, and it's the first book in a series, so it's going to be very simplistic, and also once I finish a novel, I'm ready to publish it. Like Malice is done. I want it out in the world because I can do that. But
right.
I think A Touch of Darkness, like the idea for that book came to me in like 2016, I think, and I didn't start writing that until I think the end of 2018, and then I published it in March or April or May of 2019. Oh, I don't know. I don't really remember.
So kind of maybe 3 years on that one.
Yeah. So that idea, like I wrote down a couple of sentences. It was like gods come to the earth in modern times, and like Hades is god of the underworld, but also god of like the underbelly of society. And I wrote those 2 things down, and then came back to it later. I was like, oh, I can actually write this novel now. So sometimes you have to sit with something, or your brain isn't ready to be like, yeah, that's a novel,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh yeah, I think I definitely have those ideas that are really strong, but you're not ready to write them yet, so they will take longer.
Yeah, I have one of those.
Yeah,
that has been sitting with me. I have a whole Pinterest board for it since like 2017, but for the life of me, like the plot just won't come fully together. Like the characters in the world are there and the premise, but like the plot just is like
one day. That's your planner brain. I bet if you kind of just started to explore something, you might find it.
Yes, that's what's happening with the one I'm working on now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I stop myself all the time. So
oh yeah. Yeah, and sometimes, I mean, for me, I feel like sometimes that's good because I'm right and I wasn't ready to write it at a certain point and I needed to like just learn more things and then get to the point where I was ready. And then other times you're probably right. Like probably if you dive in, you would
find it.
Yeah, you would find it more than you think. But Alicia, I'm wondering if the process has been different for your middle grades. Well, I guess you don't have like the publication.
Yeah, I don't have the publication. So I don't have a time frame.
Right. But is this current project, like you did so much research and the outlining, is this taking
so much research?
Yes. Your middle grade one?
All my books before, like I only started writing stories when I felt like the whole plot was in my head. So this book was different in that I had a premise and I mentioned it to my agent and she was like, yes, write that. And I was like, well, I don't know if I really have a grasp on it yet. And she was like, well, just work on it and let me know. And so I was like, okay. So then I did a bunch of research to try to like get the brain going. And I feel like now I have hit my stride with it. I think I had to like research a ton and outline a ton and write an entire draft of semi-correct things and semi-incorrect things. And now it's all hitting me. Like I was just sitting on the couch earlier, like drinking water and like the antagonist came to me fully formed. And I was like, okay, cool. Got it.
I was like, You really illuminate with the research that you do, though. And I don't know what it is about it, but like daydreaming is part of being an author. And just because you're thinking and not writing, it doesn't mean you're not working. Your brain is really trying to put those things together. So I think there's such a important part to those beginning stages of just reading and learning and, experiencing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, we always joke that I'm like the planner who is not intuitive, right? Because like I don't listen to my gut. But actually, it's kind of funny because really my whole process is very intuitive in a sense because every morning when I'm in that place where I've woken up, but I'm still in bed and I'm half asleep, that's where I do my planning for what I'm going to write that day. And it's that liminal space where you're not using your analytical brain. And I just visualize and I let it come to me, and I'll have my voice recorder now. And so often I will record like several pages or something like verbatim, and I'll end up like using that or whatever because I'm in that very like free flow state. But I don't always do that, but I at least will have visualized like what I'm going to write that day. And then that's what I will put down. And that's the easiest way. Like it flows so much more easily if I can do that than if I just go and I start cold and I haven't visualized it like that first. So yes, that is really helpful. Yeah, you flashed. But
what happened to you?
I don't know. It said that my internet was unstable and then I just like cut out.
That was me. I'm haunting your computers. I do that sometimes. Time for my due to first publication. So just from traditional, like kind of the typical and what happened for me on my first novel. Well, it wasn't typical in terms of this selling it part. But yeah, Skeleton Tree, I signed with my agent for it in like September of 2017. We did 3 rounds of revisions together before we subbed. And then the really non-typical part is we ended up selling it in 48 hours. Like we got like a preempt in 48 hours that it ended up going to auction. But then the typical part is that it came out 2 years later. For your debut with traditional, 2 years is pretty typical. You might have it come out 1 year later, but anywhere from like that 1 to 2 year timeline.
And you might be Jenny.
Yeah,
get
Ginny did a 1
magical.
year. Or is
Ginny got
doing
the 1 year, or a little bit less
Yeah.
than 1 year, I think. But
A
yeah,
little less.
typical.
Yeah.
So did one of my agent siblings. She sold a book in July and it's coming out end of June, like this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
And some of it might depend on the publisher and their schedule, but it also depends on how eager they are to get it out and stuff like that. So yeah. But anyway, so yeah, with traditional, that's kind of typical, and you don't get to pick your season or anything like that, or like
your season.
Yeah, that's what they call it. They call it seasons.
And there's different seasons
to me like Regency romance. They'll have a season.
Not that type of season, but
debut.
A debut season, yeah.
A dance card.
Like fall is typically considered the most competitive season, and then spring's next, and so yeah, they have their different things that they entail. But anyway, okay, so more questions that we had coming in. We had a really interesting one about characters. So how do you develop the personalities for your characters? And also, I liked this one. How do you track each character's development, if you track it? So I thought that was an interesting question. Yeah. So Scarlett, you have a big cast and they all have their own personalities. So how did you generate these personalities? And you're also drawing on myth. And then how do you track the development?
Some people have a very distinct voice, and so it's just very easy for me to know kind of who they are. But once I have that voice, I will go take personality tests with characters. So there's a 16 personalities website where it's the Myers-Briggs essentially, but it helps me know if I'm on track with the kind of personality this person has. Like, it'll give an overview of how they act in relationships and how they act in work and things like that. So I just really love to do that because it sort of gives me an idea of where to go. And also my readers ask for their personality types, so I'm already ahead of the game. But since I write from myth too, it's very nice to go and research a particular god and sort of get a feel for who they might be. I used Apollo earlier in a talk about this, which he is very regimented, and he likes sports, he likes to win, he's very competitive. So I just kind of used that, basing off like where would he live? Probably in a very like upscale like penthouse, and what would it look like? It would be very clean and everything would be monochromatic because he's like, because he is so structured and regimented. And so yeah, I kind of thought through that kind of thing. And like with Hades, obviously he is an older god, lived for a very long time. As soon as he was born, he was swallowed by his dad, and then he was birthed, like cut from the womb, right, into a 10-year war. So what would that make someone? An alcoholic is what it would make them, probably. So yeah, I really try to think hard about like the evolution of these characters, and I don't keep track very well. I just kind of feel like I know some huge things that they've experienced, and I make a note of how I feel like that would impact them later and how they would react to that later. In future books, I will definitely be better about keeping a spreadsheet that sort of tracks like all of the things that have happened to them. But yeah, it became really complicated in Malice because all of a sudden I had a huge cast of characters, and I thought, where did these people come from? But yeah, so that's kind of how I do that. Highly recommend personality tests. Fun.
Yeah, I've never tried that. I guess I should. That would be really interesting.
It makes you feel like you have a lot of personalities.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. So I don't know, for me, in terms of tracking character development, I generally have very small casts in my middle grade novels. And so there will be maybe one or two characters besides the main character that also have an arc. And so, but it's generally like a much simpler arc than the main character. And there might just be like I know they're going to change in a certain way, and there might just be like a couple beats that get them there. And so I just need to make sure that I cover that in the story. So it's not, for me, like not having those huge casts, it's not like a huge complicated thing where I have to keep a chart or anything like that. I'll kind of just do sometimes like that 7-point plot structure I mentioned. I'll just do that again for the important secondary characters to make sure that they're going to have their arc too by the end. But Alicia, what would you say? Like personalities and then tracking character development.
For personalities, again, this is the first book that I've written where not everything, where most everything was not fully formed yet when I started. So usually when I start writing a book, I at least have the main cast like down. Like I know what they want and why they want it and what they're willing to do to get it. And then from there, I can take for their arc, what I think they're going to end up as and kind of like go backwards to what they're going to start as, which is a kind of harder thing. I like it when it just appears in my head. But that's the work that I've had to do for the characters in this book. And in a middle grade revision, there was one character in particular that just I wasn't getting right until I was trying to make them like cool. And instead I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to start writing a scene with him. And he came out like really grumpy and like really sensible, but really grumpy and sarcastic. And suddenly he opened up and I was like, okay, he's mad at everything because he loves everybody and everyone's making poor choices. So yeah, for me, it's asking those questions of what does the character want and why, and then how are they going to grow from trying to get what they want? Like, are they going to delve into being selfish, or are they going to overcome something, like that sort of thing? But the personality quiz, that's interesting. I haven't tried those before. It's usually just questions.
Yeah, I just answer it like I think they would. Sorry, that's my dog.
Oh, puppies.
Puppy.
Yes. Give us more puppy. We need more puppy.
Oh, hi. You don't even know you're on camera. Clearly.
And then tracking. I typically, when I outline, I use the Save the Cat Writes a Novel book to help me with the 15 beats. And I think it's that book. It's either that one or the Take Off Your Pants, which is...
I read that one.
Yeah. That kind of guides you through crafting a character arc. So it tells you like, this beat needs to happen, this, and this. And then kind of gives you an idea of where to place them in a book. Sometimes I change that up, just how you feel your book is being paced out. But you need those beats to like show growth. So I'm like, yeah, I'll put that in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kim suggested the magic words. You remember that? And it's typically middle grade and YA, but I still use her plot checklist because it has a really good internal arc, like an emotional arc and an external arc, and I really like it. So I use that all the time.
Yeah, by Cheryl Klein. That's a really good one.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I'm actually working on a really fun project right now that has 3 viewpoint characters who are all like opposing each other. Well, 2 of them are like the main opposing forces, and one is caught in the middle.
Ooh.
This has been really fun to write because if they all have their own POV chapters, they have to sound really different and unique. And so that's been super fun. Yeah, I'm excited. This is the one that I mentioned. It's kind of a little bit inspired by that documentary, Beware the Slenderman.
Ooh.
All about the Slenderman urban legend. And there's this real...
That is so creepy.
It is.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know if I can read this book, Kim.
Yeah, you can. There's this real life case where these 3 like 12-year-old girls, essentially like one of them egged the other one on to who ended up like killing the third is the way that I remember it. So this was like a real thing.
I remember this. I think I remember.
Yeah, and the documentary is all about it. And so my book is kind of just playing with something similar, like these three friends who create their own urban legend, and then it gets out of control and they don't quite know like what to believe, and bad things start happening. And anyway, so it's fun to play with these like three different voices and trying to differentiate them and figure out how their personalities can come across as like individuals and stuff. So I love playing with that sort of thing. But yeah, I've never used personality tests or anything like that to kind of differentiate it. I'm more like Alicia.
Fun.
I know, I'll have to try it because yeah, I'm more like Alicia in that it's more kind of like what things from their past are motivating them, and like what do they want, and so what are they going to try to do to get it, and just what are they hiding from people, you know, like what face are they presenting that's not their real face, and things like that. So yeah, it's really interesting to play with. But
I had a character go through a major shift in Ruin, and I did a personality test for her after that, and her personality changed. It was really interesting to see the difference in the two. But I think it just, I don't know, it kind of helps you. It helps you like if you miss out on things, I think that, you know, since you're not that personality or you didn't go through those things, you might not think about. So I like it.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I'm going to try the personality test.
Yeah, me too. I like taking personality tests anyway.
Me too.
What Enneagram are you guys?
I forget.
I don't remember. Yeah.
I lied. I don't know if that's true. I've been asked before. I get asked what my astrological sign is all the time. And so now that is a frequently asked question of mine because I get asked that question so much.
That's so what are you?
A Taurus.
And what is that?
Stubbornness.
Mean? Like, okay.
Very stubborn.
Okay. I like it.
That's funny.
Okay, so we had another question that came in, and it was, we kind of touched on this a little bit. So it's a question about the publishing process. And I think we had kind of both for like traditional and self-publishing. What does that process look like? That's a big question though. So I'm not sure if we can tackle the whole like, what does the self-publishing process look like question. But Scarlett, do you want to kind of give maybe your big tips or things like that, or how people can get started in the self-publishing process?
I'm trying to think of how I would tell someone this because I think it's really, I mean, first you've got to finish your book. So do that. That's my number one.
Definitely.
And I say that because I get a lot of people who are like, I just can't finish. And it's like, well, you have to. I mean, you've got to finish your book. But I would choose what you're going to invest in up front. Like, you know, find a good cover designer. Honestly, that's going to be your biggest, and find someone who can represent your book really well. Cause no one wants a book that looks like, I don't know, historical romance, and it's not historical romance, if you know what I mean. So find someone who is pretty good with your cover designers. Find someone who can format your book pretty well, because a poorly formatted book is not going to come across well, and you're going to get bad reviews on that. And then I would say just like give yourself time, because a lot of people, you know, they see a self-publisher like me doing really, really well, and all they see is what I'm doing in the present. They don't know how long I've been doing this or how much I've tried and all the trial and error, right? So, you know, put your book out there. Don't stop promoting it ever. You'll never stop promoting your book, and give yourself time, because this is going to be a long process. And the first book that you publish, understand if this is the route you take, it might not be successful. That's okay. You still learned a lot from that process. Could not be until you publish your fifth book that you find success. It just is what it is. So those are my big things. Practical things will take a lot longer. Like if I have to tell you which platform to choose, which is a question I get, or like, you know, how do you search for designers or blah, blah, blah. But big overarching things, those are how to stay emotionally well while you do this.
Yeah, I think we're going to do an episode that is all like, let's just ask Scarlett questions about self-publishing so we can get more into the nitty-gritty when we're doing like the detailed episode. But yeah, so if we had to do like a question, how to get started with traditional publishing, same thing. Like, first of all, I would say get a critique group, like get beta readers and surround yourself with other people who are serious about writing and share your work so you can start improving it, because typically in traditional, like the first book you write is not going to be the book that you publish or sell, on rare occasions, but sometimes, you know, it's going to be way down the road, like you've written multiple books and then it's one of the later ones that you end up selling. So just first of all, focus on your craft, and then, but I would say it's great early on, like after you've kind of gotten really comfortable with the craft of writing and you're getting way better and you're serious about it, it's great to start thinking of it as a business early on, because a lot of people who traditionally publish don't think of it this way. They think of it just purely as an art form. And I think it's really smart to take a lot of lessons from self-publishing and kind of that whole idea of being an author entrepreneur and like applying that to traditional publishing. And I think early on that can just take the form of learning as much as you can about how the business works. So what do you need to do to research agents? Start learning what kind of terms, you know, early on are good in a contract. Like, learn just how the traditional publishing business works before you even dive in there. Don't distract yourself with it. Like, focus on the craft first and foremost. But once you've got that down, educate yourself early on so you don't get into a situation that you don't want to be in. Like, so you don't end up signing with the wrong agent that's not going to represent you in the best way, or you don't end up selling away your rights to a publisher that's not going to be the best publisher for you or something like that. So like, do that research early on, would be my advice. One piece of advice, it's a big process, but Alicia, what would you say? Maybe just like overarching tips about the publishing process.
I second everything you said, especially the critique partners, because even when you get an agent, at least for me, like I'm still using them. I still need feedback from more than just my agent. And never stop learning. I think what I had to realize after like querying that first book was you want to continually get better. You want each book you write to be the best thing you have written so far. You know, like, I don't know how else to explain that, but like, keep learning, keep reading craft books, and keep just reading in general, and keep stretching yourself. Like this manuscript I'm working on now is super hard, and I can tell it's because I'm stretching myself in a lot of different ways, creatively, like in writing. So yes, keep doing that. And then also know that the traditional publishing journey can be long. It usually is. If it's short for you, then you're an outlier. So be ready to like strap in for the long haul. Yeah. And those critique partners you find should also be like your life vests, because you're going to be out in the middle of the ocean waiting for book deals, and your life vest is going to keep you emotionally and mentally like stable and encouraging.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And I've heard someone say that traditional publishing, people think is like winning the lottery, like when you get your first book deal. But actually, your first book deal is like getting permission to play the lottery. Yeah. And so you have no idea if that book's going to hit. So like every book that you sell with traditional publishing is like you've been given permission by the gatekeepers to play this lottery once again, and you just hope for, like, you hope for the best and you try to make the best thing happen, but you still don't know. So like keeping that mindset, like, I think is way better than going into it with a mindset of like, if you sell a book, you're done. You're going to be able to do this full time forever. Congratulations. That's probably not true, right? So, and I think with self-publishing, it's a similar thing, except you don't have the gatekeeper, but what you have is the visibility problem. Like there's an overwhelming amount of books. And so it's still like playing the lottery. Like you said, it may not be your first one.
Yeah, I think that's always hard because people have a lot of dreams of grandeur, which we all did as yeah, I mean, I really did, and even when you get here where you feel like I feel as though like I've made it, right? You still things are so weird and so different and so still so complicated. And so it's very different. It's just a journey, and once you start to embrace that, it's a lot easier, but it's very hard to get to that point, especially when you want something so bad. But I think us three, we've wanted this pretty bad. So, and we went about doing it very differently. But I think that's the cool part about hearing different stories is that we've all made it work somehow.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no one path to your dremes.
Absolutely.
Nope. You don't have to be a certain age. You don't have to,
Nope. You can be 100 and you can sell your first book.
You could be a dog. I'm pretty sure someone's dog has a book.
Yes, there's a lot of those.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
In the trunk. But okay, cool. Well, if anybody does have a question, any viewers, you can get those in the comments because we're getting ready to finish up. But we did have one more question that came in about the editing process. So what does the editing process look for you? And also kind of like finding editors, which is probably a big question too. But I'll say, so I think with traditional, like the editing process is just going to take longer because you're waiting to hear back from people. So it's not optional whether or not you do like a developmental edit or a line edit or a proofread, copy edit, etc. You go through all of these stages. So in my experience, usually there will be 1 or 2 rounds of developmental edits with the agent. Puppies! I'm not distracted. With the agent, and then you'll have, probably like 1 to 3 rounds of developmental edits with the editor. And bearing in mind that I tend to turn them around really fast, but then it's going to take the editor however long it takes them to respond with the next round of notes. So like building in that time. And then my experience has been, then it goes to line edits, which are like line or copy edits. And these are usually things, and for me, that are like, well, Walmart doesn't have a dash, a hyphen in it, or,
grammar police.
Yeah, but actually more than that, it's like, either like you mentioned this city and that city isn't in that spot, or like you said this one thing on this one page and then this other page their shirt changed color, so fix that. So it's like continuity errors or things that you mentioned from the real world that are not that way, like need to be corrected or things like that. And so you might do 1 or 2 rounds of those, and then the proofread is the final thing. So this is the final thing they go through, and they'll usually just send you a list of queries. And that's like, on this line, that's the very specific, like teeny tiny typo things or whatever. And so you might have 1 or 2 rounds of that. And then you're done. So as you can imagine, this whole process has taken quite a while as you're waiting for people to get back to you with each of those rounds of notes. And it can vary by publisher, because I found like with one of my publishers, they had like 3 rounds of copy edits and 3 rounds of proofreads, and they didn't put out the ARCs until like, at least I think like the second to last pass was done of the proofreads. And then I had this other publisher that ends up, they put them out like after copy edits. I was like, what? Because I would have paid more attention if I had known like it was going to go out after that. So yeah, they can vary.
I have a question.
Yes.
You said that you do like 1 or 2 rounds of developmental edits with your agent before your editor. Is that just for books that you're going on submission with, or is that for all your books, even the ones that were like you already had your editor? Do you still send it first to your agent and then your editor?
In my experience, I only do that with the ones that we're going to go on submission with and have not sold yet. Or if it's a proposal that maybe it's an exclusive submission to like my editor that I've worked with before, and it's just a proposal, I will usually still have notes like from the agent on that. But if it's something like after that sells though, I would not typically get notes once I complete, like I flesh that out to a full manuscript. I would just be working directly with my editor. Now, if you wanted to.
That makes sense. I was just double checking.
And it's funny because I actually had someone else ask me about that the other day who's been in the business for a while and was kind of had questions on that point. So that's been my experience. But like I said, I think that if you really wanted to get that feedback from your agent before, or if you had, like, I don't know, if you had questions and you wanted a second opinion, I think you totally could work like in more depth with them, but that hasn't been how I've handled it in the past. So Scarlett, editorial process.
I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good. I'll just I'll poke you with Jerry. So yeah, editorial process. And since you find your own editors, like, what does that look like?
It's so complicated. Okay, so I do something different than most self-published authors do, and that I go through a developmental edit. And I have editors for that. She's actually my friend Nicole and her friend Ariel have opened up a editorial company called Adistrata, and so I send my book to them for developmental edits, and then I usually run out of time to do any other edits because of my timeline work. So this time, what I did is I sent my book to my street team, and I asked a couple of people to volunteer to help me do some editorial work, and so they did. And then I took a break from the manuscript and then did my final pass through this time. And I kind of hate to do that because I know, I can't catch everything and we can't catch everything. Obviously, my street team couldn't catch everything because they didn't catch everything, and that's not their fault. They're excited to read the book, right? So so what ends up happening usually is for any author, I think, but particular self-published authors, we talk about this a lot, where people will report errors on Amazon, which is not the way to go about doing that. You should always email the author because you can get a book taken down if you do that. But if those errors do come through on my site, I always fix them and re-upload a new copy. So yeah, but I mean, it's just hard to find a good freelance author, but you have to expect as a self-published author, starting out, maybe you can't afford to spend thousands of dollars on an editor. You probably cannot. So you really are going to get what you pay for, which is not a very good editing service, right? So if you're not paying like what you think is probably ridiculous for editing, you're not going to get a very good editor. It's kind of the reality. You're just not. And I've worked with a lot of editors. So I've worked with good and I have worked with not so good. And the people who know their stuff will charge for it, what they're supposed to charge for it. So yeah, I always highly recommend working with initially, like you guys talked about earlier, my process, those beta readers, they're like, number one, like I have a critique partner that I do developments with. I have beta readers who I run all my, early drafts through, and then we do the developmental edit. And then when I get it back, I edit. And then that's the point that it goes to the street team, and then they give me my feedback and I get to take a break and then I read through again. So it's a big process for me, just kind of almost like it is for you guys. It's what it is. It's not like, oh, these people have been in this business forever, they know exactly what they're looking for. It's a lot of it's kind of stressful. Maybe one day it won't be so hard.
Yeah, it's a long process.
What's that sound?
Sure. But I forgot, because you mentioned beta. I forgot to mention the betas, because I will use the betas before I send it to the agent, and depending on the book, depends how many rounds I'll do before that happens. But Alicia, what about your editorial process?
So far, I've just used critique partners and my agent. So before I joined this lovely group of writerly women, it was just my 3 critique partners critiquing like each chapter, and then I had one who was able to read the entire thing and give me like a bigger idea, and then I sent it, like fixed that, and then I sent it to my agent, and then did edits with her. With this one, I think I'm going to use critique partners, and then you ladies, if you're available for like beta reading, before sending it off.
I want to read it.
To the agent.
Oh yeah, I'm ready. I think, I used to do the critique group thing where you did chapter by chapter, and I just found that at a certain point, I felt like I had sort of outgrown it, although I still like attend. I mean, I still have a group that I attend sometimes, but it's just for like social interaction for me at this point, because you can only do so much within a chapter. When you're doing a chapter, it's like sentence level or paragraph level, and I just feel like I don't need that. All I need is the overarching. Like I need a lot of help with the overarching, and so I need someone to read the entire thing like a beta and just tell me, as a reader, what was their experience and what could be different, what could be better. So
I found that too with like chapter by chapter critique groups. It's like it's so much easier to have someone who can read your whole book and give you feedback, or someone who just is a writer, because you cannot ask non-writers some of these questions. They do not get it. It's so hard.
Yeah.
Why can't you just do blah, blah, blah? You're the writer. I'm like, that's not how this works. Let me tell you, it does not work like that. So
I think it's true. I think starting out like the chapter by chapter can be really helpful, because starting out, like you don't know what's effective at the sentence level, and you have to learn all those things in the beginning. So like I say, do it for sure, but at a certain point, you're probably going to go like the full beta reads will be more useful. But
I still like the early chapters to solidify the character and voice, to make sure that and the desires coming through. And then once I get that, that's usually like the first 5 chapters. Then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna write the whole thing, and then I'll get back to you guys.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
I kind of just like to keep things too. I don't know. Like sometimes I'm like, I want to keep this a secret, and then and then like I'll email it to someone, or I don't know. I get really anxious about it, but and I have to be even more protective of my work now and who I send it to, because it's coveted in a weird way. So I'm very weird about sending out certain documents, and I'll like mark them in secret ways so I can pinpoint the person who leaks it online. So I'm the weirdo.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, I think especially, anything can be leaked, but since you're self-publishing, there's this, I feel like people would put it up on the pirate side. It would be more, inclined to do that or something. I don't know.
I don't know how that actually happens, but I was talking to an author today, and we were talking about that, like how it's really hard for us to combat the piracy, and hers was leaked by someone on her ARC team. And so, and I think sometimes they, they maybe they do mean well, and they're like, I'm just going to share this with a friend. And I'm like, absolutely not. Like, you're sworn to secrecy, and I will figure out who this is, and you will be gone. So I have no chill with that kind of thing. But you have to be careful once you start to gain a sort of, a bigger readership. And I've seen that a lot with Malice recently. Like, there's a very strange anticipation around this book that has never been around any of my other books. So I just kind of don't trust it already.
Yeah. That makes sense. Anytime that people think, and not that like any person on your street team now would do that, but like any other outside people think that they can make money off of something, that's when you have to be really careful. Yeah.
And it gets on really weird sites like wish.com and Etsy. And Etsy is the worst. So
that's weird.
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, lots of stuff.
This is what you both have to look forward to.
Well,
Kim, you may already be on those sites.
Oh no, I think it's like a friendlier. The middle grade doesn't tend to have that type of I don't know. It's just that type of fandom. It's like, it's like the teachers and the 12-year-olds. I don't think they're pirating a lot of
You don't think they're pirating? I don't really know, but it makes me mad. I'm just like, what?
Young adult is horrible with the pirating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw someone suggesting kids. Yeah. Well, authors talk about this all the time. Traditionally published authors talk about this all the time, where they can't finish a series or they weren't sure they were going to be able to finish a series because their sales looked so poor. But it was because their books were being illegally downloaded.
Wow.
So
actually,
the dedication.
I have a friend who sent me a site that had thousands of pirated books, and she was like, "Here you go. You love books," and I was like, "Oh."
Like, wow. Let me educate you.
Wrong person. Just a
And I think some of those are like, if you actually click, they're just stealing your information. They don't actually have the book, but still, it is a big problem. And it's just, anyway, so that's for another episode.
Yeah. A mini rant.
I know. Well, I think we pretty much covered all of the questions that we had ahead of time. And like I said, we are going to do another episode where it's like all of your questions on self-publishing for Scarlett. So we'll make that its own little episode. Yeah. But if anyone does have an idea for another upcoming topic that we might do, get that in the comments and we'll be sure to do that. And I'm super glad we got to see we got some dog action tonight. So that was amazing.
We did. I'm sorry.
It was awesome. I love it.
She just really wanted my attention.
See, my dog, she's just sleeping in her bed. Like but she can't really come over because I have too much stuff anyway. But
I knew she was going to do that. She's chewing on her bone, but she's going back and forth between that and attacking me. Her life.
All right. I love it. Well, thanks for everyone who joined us tonight. And yeah, get in those topic ideas for next time. And we will see everyone next week at the same time. Bye.